This is a book review of The Awakening by Kate Chopin. This book was published in 1899, and Kate Chopin is an American female writer from the South. It's a little novella. It reminds me a bit, because of the setting, of the Bronte sisters in England, also the female voice, and in America, Henry James and Edith Wharton. It was admired at the time that it was published, but it was also a bit shocking. And so Chopin wasn't really able to publish after that. It ended her career because it was so close to people's sense of the scandalous. However, since the 1960s, much later, it became part of the canon for female literary themes that it expresses. It's often assigned, and if you're a student, welcome. This is a review, not a Cliff Notes. I'm going to talk about the text. Edna Pontellier is the major character, and they just start in the middle. She is with her family, her children, and her husband and her friends on a trip to the beach. And the husband is not terribly part of it, but she's learning how to swim, and they're having a lovely time. She's a well-to-do woman in this world that's unfamiliar to most people. Therefore, it has a lot of value in just the description of the setting. It's very yummy. It's like a period piece. It's a fantasy for a woman to be like, oh, I would love to be a well-to-do woman who can go about in wonderful vacations and have servants and not have to worry about anything. But where's the story? If that's the issue, where's the story? Where's the drama? Edna is testing the limits. It doesn't seem apparent at first because she's just living this beautiful life. But she's trying to learn how to swim. And this young man, who's unmarried, she's married, but he's a young bachelor who's taking a lot of time. Every single day he's teaching her how to swim, but she just can't seem to get it. She doesn't seem to, it's just really hard. And here, in a great foreshadowing of what happens, is the day that she learns how to swim. As she swam, she seemed to be reaching out to the unlimited in which to lose herself. Once she turned and looked toward the shore, towards the people she had left there. She had not gone any great distance, that is, what would have been a great distance for an experienced swimmer. But to her unaccustomed vision, the stretch of water behind her assumed the aspect of a barrier, which her unaided strength would never be able to overcome. A quick vision of death smote her soul, and for a second of time appalled and enfeebled her senses. But by an effort, she rallied her staggering faculties and managed to regain the land. This is a foreshadowing. Now, Robert has been hanging out with her and just really being very devoted to her. He even taught her how to swim, and she sees the possibilities of this, the unlimited. And so she's kind of surprised. Now, she's from Kentucky. They're all from New Orleans, and they have this Frenchification and the Creole life there. So she's like, I don't know what this is about, but okay. And she doesn't mind having Robert. She's like, okay, Robert's very nice that Robert is around all the time. After this experience, everyone seems to think it's okay about how this guy is really devoted toward her. And I want to say for a minute, this reminded me of the King Arthur story of Sir Lancelot and Guinevere, that Sir Lancelot was completely dedicated to Queen Guinevere, but the problem was there was this King Arthur who was married to to the woman that this hero was in love with. So that was happening. But this is not the story. This is not that story. she was expected to behave in a certain way within the confines. Now, this well-to-do world, similar to what happens in the Victorian era, like Jane Austen's works too, she has expectations and she can be gracious, but there's a limit, right? So she understands that they have this custom. She's not really sure about it. She is not as emotional. She's actually kind of reserved as opposed to these other women that were raised in New Orleans. So she has this dedicated young man and her husband who is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with it. And she says repeatedly, there's nothing she could complain about. But she tests the boundaries a bit. Now, women will do this. Women will choose to do something different to see how he'll react, to see what the attachment is. And he's not cruel to her. He's fine. But he's kind of tepid. And so he doesn't awaken her as she would like. Okay. Now, here remains the problem with Robert. Robert has feelings for her too. Okay. But he knows he's not supposed to go past a certain point. He knows where the barrier is. He's like, okay, this is it. But he has feelings for her. So he does take a trip. He goes to Mexico, which he's been talking about for a while. But he actually does it. And this really affects Edna. And everyone understands that she had these feelings for him, but that they weren't going to do anything. Everyone understands that's how it's supposed to be. So she's like, oh, so she has these feelings. And what is she going to do about that? Interestingly, one of her friends, Madame Ratignolle, has already, they flash back, Kate Chopin flashes back to a conversation where she is saying they had an argument, her very good friend, where Edna says, and this is a quote, "I would give up the unessential. I would give up money. I would give up my life for my children, but I wouldn't give up myself. I can't make it any more clear. It's only something which I am beginning to comprehend, which is revealing itself to me." And so this is what the awakening means. Like, what is it that she's talking about? This is the awakening that's the title of the book. This is the whole thing, from my opinion. Now, Madame Ratignolle says, "I don't know what you would call the essential or what you mean by unessential," said Madame Ratignolle cheerfully, "but a woman who would give up her life for her children could do no more than that. Your Bible tells you so. I'm sure I couldn't do more than this." And this is the part Edna says, "Oh, yes, you could," laughed Edna. And that, to me, is the whole pivot of the entire book. That, right there, is what we're talking about. Her choices go against the line. Edna makes choices like, okay, Robert's gone. She doesn't want to give up herself. Her life, she considers not herself, but herself she wants to hang on to. So she's like, okay, she's moving her furniture around. She's trying things out. She begins to stop receiving guests on the Tuesday, which is what they do. It's part of, this also happens in the Victorian novels, Austen novels. They have receiving. Well, she just says, I'm not going to do it anymore. Well, that's shocking. Her friend, Madame Ratignolle, says, you should be careful what people think. And even her husband is like, what are you doing? He talks to a doctor and says, I'm not sure what's wrong with her. He's not a bad guy. He's like, something's off with her. I'm not sure what's going on. And the doctor says, oh, just leave her alone. It'll pass. This is interesting too in the female world. Like, oh, yeah, that happens. He's not trying to understand. He's not asking her. He thinks he can manage her. All right, so she's like, okay. She stops doing things she doesn't like. So then she starts painting. Okay, she wants to try painting. She's like, perhaps I have something there. And she knows it's not her passion, but she's trying it out. And then she actually finds someone an art dealer who will sell her paintings. He commissions some just like holiday pieces or whatever. So she's separating herself from what's going on in her family. Now, her husband just leaves. He's like, okay, doctor says just let her have her own way. He goes off on a business trip for quite a while. And then she actually was like, well, I'll send off my children to her grandparents. How great is that? Talk about wish fulfillment for a modern woman now. Like, husband's gone, everything else is taken care of, servants. This is great. So she's just trying to explore her life. She's trying to understand the limits. Remember that unlimited that she saw when she was swimming? Her father comes to visit. This is an interesting part in the story because this is a blast. He's not a very significant character, but it's significant for what it does for Edna. So he's an interesting character because he's a Confederate Civil War colonel from Kentucky. He doesn't have, so he's just kind of this old guy. He doesn't hardly say anything, but she kind of remembers who she is. Like, oh yeah, I'm from Kentucky. I actually know some things about horses. And they have this great scene where they're going to the races and she's been talking to her dad. So she kind of remembers, oh yeah, this horse is good horse flesh. And she does a good job betting. And so she gets money that way. So she actually did very well in picking the right horses for the race and makes a lot of money here. So people admire her that she's speaking up and they're like, ooh, listen to her. And she sees that she's getting attention for her individual self. So she's like, oh, she kind of likes that. And she decides to set up her own house. Her husband's gone. Her children are gone. This other guy starts hanging around her. This other guy who's kind of known for picking women to, I'll say Arobin is his name. He's kind of known for picking on women to sort of attend to. So she gets this idea that she's going to set up her own house. She's like, I'm going to have my own house. She has her own money. How great is that? She has her own money. So she gets what they call like a little pigeon house. And she has like one servant who will help her. So she's really testing her independence. Her husband, who is gone, gets this note that she's like, hey, I'm just going to be living in another place too. She didn't have any intention to shut up the old house or not. They didn't own it, to rent it. But anyway, so he's like, what is going on? So he's like, I need to cover up that she's not actually just going to have her own house. So he's like, yeah, everybody, we're renovating the house. And so they start renovating, and so she's like, okay, whatever. And so she's experimenting with what can be done, and she's thinking about it. She's made another friend who's Madame Rates, who's kind of helping her explore what this is. She's very single-minded. See, this is psychological. This is not easily understood. And this is why it reminds me a lot of Henry James. She keeps her intention to find out what herself is. She's awakening to this idea of herself. The romance and the history of the setting helps us be interested in this very, what one might call navel gazing. She's really looking at herself. She continues to be very, she remembers Robert. He's gone, but she has not forgotten him. And she knows she is infatuated with him. They don't ever say in love. She's infatuated with him, but she also remembers that she's had a history of being infatuated with other people. This exploration of herself is the awakening that she's going through. She's not satisfied. She's not, you might say she's not happy, but she's not satisfied with what's going on. And now, what happens is, Robert comes back. Robert pops in on her life while she has her own house. She could absolutely set up with him. He confesses. Spoiler alert. He confesses that that's what's happening, that he cares about her and that's why he left. So what is it? He comes back and she goes away to help her friend. She's excited. She is very excited. She feels it. She's like, oh, at last Robert is here. But then she gets called away to help her friend, Madame Ratignolle. It's not entirely clear because they're being obtuse, but she might be in childbirth or she might be just sick. So she goes, and Robert was going to wait for her all day, in her, like all night. She leaves in the middle of the night. Robert is there, and that could have been something, but she goes away, comes back, and Robert has gone. If it were Robert, she could go right after him, if that was the point. But the point was not Robert. She sees the doctor. She's like, okay, Robert is here. She runs away and is realizing that that's not the heart of the matter. She sees the doctor as she's going to the beach. That's where she sets up to go. She says, I don't want anything but my own way. That is wanting a good deal, of course. But when you have to trample upon the lives, the hearts, the prejudice of others, but no matter, still, I shouldn't want to trample upon the little lives. Oh, I don't know what I'm saying, doctor. Good night. Don't blame me for anything. So she sees that she's headed off to the next thing that she's going to. And as the foreshadowing says, she goes back to the beach. She goes back to the beach and goes into the water. There is no human being whom she wanted near her except Robert. And she even realized that the day would come when he too, and the thought of him, would melt out of her existence, leaving her alone. The children appeared before her like antagonists who had overcome her, who had overpowered and sought to drag her into the soul's slavery for the rest of her days. But she knew a way to elude them. She was not thinking of these things when she walked down to the beach. She goes out into the water and is thinking of herself. She goes out into the water trying to reach for those unlimited possibilities and says, goodbye, because I love you. It was too late. The shore was far behind her and her strength was gone. This is the awakening that's happening. It's not a particular thing or specific that is catching her. It's her trying to find room for her own soul in this world that is pulling her all these different ways. This is how it began to be a feminist classic. It reminds me a bit of the 1960s story, Heat, Death of the Universe, where the woman is trying to figure out who she is in this world that she is the center of. Where is the self in the middle of this? It's not a love story other than Edna's commitment to herself. I'm not sure This is I think it's a very feminine thing. It's a very female thing. And it would be a difficult one for some teenagers, I think, and this gets assigned to teenagers, to understand. But that is the crux of this. I read this book for the first time when I was very young, early in college. And it staggered me. I loved it. I was glad to read it again and wrestle with what it's got going on here. It's really the story of a woman awakening to her female self. It's gorgeous. The writing is gorgeous, and it deserves to be read for those and for the many, many parts that could be discussed further.